right, welcome to another edition of the Bleeding Edge of Digital Health, guys. I'm really excited about today's show. I've been wanting to get Joel on the show for some time now. We've got Joel Portice with us today. Joel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. Good to be here.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I've followed Ignite Health from afar from, I don't know, I'd say about six months now. I actually, a physician kind of turned me on to you guys, and I thought the technology was absolutely fascinating for some time. And then Keith Lauer actually reached out to me a while back, and we connected on some recruiting that you guys were doing, and that was my opportunity to jump in and finagle getting you on the show. So I appreciate you coming on. What I thought we'd start with, Joel, is just if we could, I'd like to have you do a brief overview of just kind of who Ignite is, what you guys have going on, kind of how you got involved in the company. You've got a very interesting background, a phenomenal background, but a very diverse background in both technology and digital health. And so it's interesting that you landed there. I'd love to hear just kind of an overview of the company and how you got involved.
You bet. So thanks, Mike. So, the genesis of the company actually started in Edwards Lifesciences. And it was this advanced technology, artificial intelligence group that was built within Edwards Lifesciences. My background, for the last 25 years, I have been focused on using technology and data to solve problems in healthcare. Didn't originally set out to do that in healthcare, but I knew from very early on in my career that I wanted to use data, I wanted to use technology, I wanted to use it to solve big problems in this country specifically. And it just so happened that healthcare was ripe to jump into. And, 25 years later, here I am. I'm still using data and technology to solve problems in healthcare. And my commitment on the healthcare side, and what got me interested in that, the more my experience matured in that space, was it's such a massive market, right? There's so much going on in that space.
Yeah.
And it's fragmented, it's dysfunctional.
Broken.
It's broken, but it touches all of us, right? And that was my whole point, was there's nothing more intimate than what is going to happen to us in our healthcare experience. And yet there are so many ways where people can fall through the cracks. And so that was really what got me interested in that. But Ignite started out as CardioCare. It was a business unit that was created within Edwards Lifesciences. Mike Dobbles, who is our Chief Technology Officer, really is kind of the guy who started this whole thing. Folks like Keith Lauer that you mentioned, he's been around since the very beginning as well. People like Rich Lunsford, who are still at Edwards, were really important early stage folks in the genesis of this company. And, 6 years after developing this software and this technology and really focusing on aortic stenosis because that was a main need at Edwards Lifesciences, I think the leadership team there kind of looked at it one day and realized this thing could probably move a lot faster if it was outside of the walls of a massive publicly traded medical device organization. Edwards, as you know, they've done some amazing things in the market, and I actually applaud those folks at Edwards for having that self-awareness to realize.
Absolutely, yeah. That you don't see many big companies that self-aware to say, "Hey, these guys are better off on their own."
Yeah. Because they want to keep it inside, right? And the problem with that is the unintentional consequence of that is you have that organization who can use technology and advanced analytics to really help them grow their market, kind of getting unintentionally starved for resource because you're always competing. So for them to say, let's take this thing, spin it out, and let it grow as an organization is really interesting because they could have kept it, to your point. A lot of big companies, they don't do that. They could have kept it inside, but because when we take it outside, Mike, what we're doing is we're building an independent organization that is going to touch all cardiovascular patients, right? So our vision is a very audacious vision, and our vision is we want to identify every cardiovascular patient in America and elevate the standard of their care. And we believe that we can do that, right? And so when you start to do that, and we stop at that last mile. So we identify these patients, we elevate them. We have nothing to do with the therapy that comes from that. But obviously, it's quite possible that competitors of Edwards could be benefiting from that.
Sure.
But they, again, to Edwards' credit, that didn't bother them because their emphasis was if it's good for the patient, it's good for everybody. So they approached me, gosh, it must have been in somewhere early stages of the pandemic, mid stages of the pandemic. I've spending time at that point focusing on private equity, working as a managing partner with a private equity firm, working with some of their portfolio companies. I looked at this and I thought, okay, this is truly a digital health company that has a massive growth opportunity. And so as I was talking to Edwards about what this structure would look like and how we would do that, we talked about how we're going to expand the pathology of the structural heart from just aortic stenosis. We're going to use this AI. We're going to use our natural language processing software. We're going to use our machine learning capabilities, and we're going to identify these patients across all pathologies of structural heart. All right. And so in addition to that, we want to move all the way across a continuum of cardiovascular. And I could talk a little bit about some of the advancements we've done there, but they got it. And they saw this, let's do this. We want to be able to focus on the hospitals. We want to be able to focus on the medical device companies that are in the space. Big opportunities. We think there's a place for pharma to be able to benefit from the intelligence that we have because we've got this massive database of echocardiograms,
Sure.
the largest in the industry. And we can use that coupled with other data sets that we have on patient and provider and hospital information in order to find all types of insight for the market. So the Edwards team said, yep, get it, we got it. That's a great idea. It's a great strategy. And we spun it out in February of 2021.
That was your pitch to them? Your pitch, that whole concept was kind of what you said. If I came in, this is what I do, and they bought it, huh? They bought it.
I can't. What I said was, if I come in, we're going to be expanding to all pathologies. They got it. They get it. I think there's already been work. Dobbles and his team had been focusing on doing that anyway. But we're going to expand beyond structural heart, and we're going to think about all valvular heart disease, all cardiovascular disease. We're going to go into not only the hospitals, but we want to focus on the med tech space. That was part of the pitch. I believed at the time, and we talked about how there's a pharma opportunity. We think there's a payer opportunity, and there's definitely a international play here too. All of these med tech companies have large footprints in other parts of the world, whether it's Asia, whether it's Europe. That gentleman's heart in Tokyo or that woman's heart.
It's the same, yeah.
They have the same composition. So we think that there's a big play in the international space as well. So that was the pitch. And what I said was we're going to focus on kind of the strategy. It's a multidimensional but very sequential, incremental strategy. It builds on itself. It builds on progress and in certain achievements. They agreed. We spun it out in February, and we have been off to the races. We're coming out of 21 and having a banner year. We had tremendous growth, both in terms of our revenue, in terms of new clients. Our innovation has been off the charts. I can talk more about that. So we did those things. We did exactly what we said we would do. And in addition to all that, during a pandemic, and Tori Loper on our marketing team, who I know you've met, Mike, she reminded me that during that time, during a pandemic, we branded the name, branded the company. We set it up as an independent organization. We did all of the marketing and organizational constructs that go with setting up a company. Did it all in the pandemic and did it all remotely.
Recruitment,
onboarding when we spun this company out, obviously 100% of the folks at that time were Edwards employees. Today, because of our growth and just the kind of the shift to really this technology, digital health, AI company, today 43% of our employees actually were Edwards employees. So 57% of our employees were never Edwards employees.
For those listening out there, if you haven't read Joel's initial, I'll call it an essay, Joel. I don't know if that's doing it enough justice, but what you wrote on LinkedIn, right, as you were launching this thing was pretty inspiring. I was reading that and I was like, this is, and obviously I'm reading this retrospectively. I didn't read it in the moment, but as I was reading through that, and then I kind of, reflecting back on your guys' journey, you obviously there's a lot of road in between here and Baghdad, so to speak, but you guys have delivered on a lot of what you've said you were going to, and it's been exciting to watch you guys develop and grow. And as I hear you talking, that what's interesting to me about this whole digital health space is everything builds. You said it's very systematic. Everything grows and builds upon itself, and it's so funny because as the data aggregates, so are your capabilities. You guys are.
Yep.
We'll get into some of the other stuff you're doing beyond structural heart a little bit later in the show, but as that data continues to build and become not only more valuable but more useful. And so it's going to be exciting to see where you guys end up taking this thing when all's said and done. For the purposes of this show, my goal, Joe, is, as I've shared with you in the past, is I really like the product to be the star of the show here. And so I'm very intentional about the fact that I want this podcast to serve as somewhat of a long commercial for you guys. Let's dig into the product a little bit. So the flagship platform is CardioCare. And
that's correct.
Walk us through, some of just the specifics around that. What was it initially constructed to do? How does it work? What ultimately does it yield?
Yeah. So again, think of this, and to your point about the data, you're spot on, right? When we were putting this together, and I remember when we had our first national sales meeting, and I was kind of laying out the vision, reminding some of the new folks, or reminding the legacy folks of what the vision was, articulating to the new people what the vision is. And as we're talking through this and kind of walking through where we were going and how we were going to get there, right? Because it doesn't, our business strategy, Mike, is not overly complicated. And I remind the team that it's not that hard to understand our strategy, but it takes hard work to execute.
I was going to say it's tough to execute. Yeah, exactly.
And so we stay very focused on execution, right? I believe, who was it? Steve Case had said, strategy without execution is delusion. Right. I don't ever want that to be our case. I don't ever want us to be delusionary about our strategy. So we stay very focused on execution. And, we have 3 to 5 objectives that we corporate objectives and imperatives that all the other OKRs of everybody in the company kind of roll up to these 3 to 5 imperatives. But it really does continue to learn from the data. And so when I was putting this presentation together, I ended this first national sales meeting kind of keynote kickoff with a slide that said, Ignite 2025, and then it says underneath it, you mean that data company. Right. But the reality is that was the whole idea is, guys, we're gonna become a data company just by the virtue of our plan and our execution, right? At our foundation is this very sophisticated, highly accurate artificial intelligence, machine learning, and NLP that allows us to make wonderful intelligence and decisions and help support our practices, our customers' practices in hospitals with the data. But I'm telling you, we thought by 2025 we'd be a data company. We're in 2022, and we're already a data company, right? Yeah. I mean, we've had that type of growth, that type of explosion, where all of a sudden, guys, we are that data company. And so CardioCare was as you mentioned, is a foundational business or the foundational product. And really, what it was intended to do, and I did not, so I come from software and data analytics in healthcare, but I don't come from the cardiovascular space. And what I didn't appreciate until I joined this organization was how undertreated cardiovascular disease, valvular disease is in this country. I had the pleasure 2 weeks ago of being on site at a hospital and watching 4 cases and observing 4 cases. And I came away, really with a couple of really big, takeaways for me. One was a deep appreciation for what these cardiologists do.
Brilliant physicians, yeah.
Yeah, what they do is phenomenal. I told my wife at the end of the day, I'd seen 4, and I told her, I said, I'm exhausted, and I didn't do a thing. Right. I just stood there, and
trying to understand it all and try to take it all in and digest it.
Right? Yeah. And stay out of the way as much as possible. So one was I came away with just this even deeper respect for these men and women that perform these surgeries. The second was there were reps from the device companies in each of these cases, and how knowledgeable and how actually involved they are in this process. I had not seen that before. Again, I don't come from the space.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh,
I bet you that was pretty eye-opening. Yeah.
It was incredible. They scrub up. They are in there. They are narrating and discussing with the physician,
measuring and everything else.
Everything. Yeah. But I was talking to one of the reps, and she told me that for her particular device, she said 2% of the population that actually need this are actually identified. 2%. So think about that. You got 98% of the folks that need that particular device walking around in their day-to-day lives, not realizing that they may have some form of severe structural heart disease, severe valvular heart disease. And if you have that, your mortality is about 24 months. Yeah. So for me, what gets me really excited and what CardioCare was really all about was let's find those people that have this severe case of structural heart disease, and let's identify them and let's engage with them and manage them through this clinical and care pathway, which, as you know, can be daunting. It can be fragmented. It's convoluted. And if we can help bring these folks into this system and navigate them through this process so that they have a successful outcome, that's really meaningful work. And I think that's what gets our team going.
So, and do I understand this correctly, Joel, in that you can have 2 patients that are classified as like moderate risk, but they can have just in the early research I did on the software, those 2 patients can have 2 totally different trajectories to being, one could be moderate for 5 years, where the other one could be moved from moderate to severe in 12 months, and the software kind of aggregates all these different data points to better predict which patients are gonna be that one that's gonna be at risk in 12 months versus 5 years. That's kind of dumbing it down, but am I doing it any type of service?
You're not dumbing it down at all. You're doing great service. So last year in 21, we had 3 major software releases, right? One of them was we went from the original CardioCare platform, which was focused on aortic stenosis because that's where Edwards' business was, to all pathologies, right? So we can now find
mitral or whatever.
Right, heart failure. We can find tricuspid patients. We can find all the pathologies of the heart. And in addition, we also released and have implemented across our clients these predictive algorithms and these predictive analytics that can do really 2 main things, Mike. One is we can identify if an individual was diagnosed as moderate, but really should be diagnosed as severe, right? So we can find that. And that's key.
That's huge.
Because if you're moderate and somebody says come back in 2 years and you're actually severe, there's a chance you'll be dead in 2 years. right? So the ability to predict that somebody who may be diagnosed as moderate is in fact actually severe case.
Misdiagnosed.
Yeah, you just there were maybe data elements that whoever did the diagnosis didn't have
Right.
access to.
Right.
And so we have access and we have the technology to be able to read that information much faster. And using math and science to be able to actually bring a different perspective to it. And then the other prediction is to your point, we can predict if somebody is moderate, we can predict the progression of that disease. So we know when they're going to be severe. And what our system does is we aggregate data from the hospital on a nightly basis, and we publish in our dashboard every single night a list of new patients. We help prioritize based on their risk factors of folks that are in the system that have a severe form of one of these pathologies of the disease that are not being treated, right? They have not been seen by anybody on the heart team. And so, it's that predictive analytic capability that nobody else has, nobody else is doing, that allows us to identify these folks fast and then elevate them immediately.
At that point, it's what I like to call a warm body decision. The physician, rather than spending their time sourcing all these different data points and trying to align all the stars and read the tea leaves, the physician can be presented with that information and make the warm body decision, the decision that the reason they went to medical school, which is to practice medicine, of like, okay, right, this person needs a procedure now, or we need to put this person on, this medication for 6 months, track them. But that data bubbles up every morning, and they get to make those decisions based on the what the data tells them, right?
It does, and they don't have to look through a list of 2,000 patients. Right. We are going to prioritize and highlight the most at risk. So what they're going to see is a list of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 patients who are in their system who have a disease and have not been talked to yet by the heart team.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
And this is the beauty of AI, right? And this is the beauty of using technology to solve these problems. And what I love about AI is if we would have had this discussion 10 years ago, it was just way too early. But now, these physicians are brilliant people. They read about this in mainstream media. They read about this in their journals, their academic journals. They read about this in trade publications. AI, and specifically applying AI to fighting cardiovascular disease, these guys get it. They see it.
Yeah, they know the power of it. Yeah.
They know the power of it, exactly.
Yeah. Whose baby was it? Was this something that Mike Dobbles created in his head, or who was the?
Yeah. Mike Dobbles, our CTO, was the guy who really came up with this, and he's the guy who built this, and he's the guy who since then has built the team that continues to drive this, right? So, and in addition, Kayla Dean runs our product area, and Kayla works very closely with Mike on what the software, because Kayla's an engineer as well, and so what the software schedule should be, where we should be focusing first. But Mike is the guy who really 7 years ago now, actually had this idea.
You and I were talking before we started filming here. It's with AI and software as a medical device and software as a service in healthcare, regulatory wise, it's seemingly building the plane as we're flying it a little bit here. Did you guys run into any regulatory challenges when you guys were moving forth with this? What was the pathway like?
Because we are a clinical decision support software, we're not regulated by the FDA, right? So we stay very close to FDA regulations. Compliance is a big piece of our what we do. Our general counsel came out of Edwards, so she fully understands all the issues going on with FDA and regulations. So we feel like we've got it covered, but we're very fortunate because we are not providing diagnoses. And because we are considered a clinical decision support software, that it's not an issue for us. We're not regulated.
That's great. Was there any and this may be a better question from Mike since he was going through the process, but when he was developing the software and whatnot, was there any what was the big challenge? I mean, what was it? Was it just really just building that algorithm? Was that the challenge, or was it identifying what the data points are that are going to be key contributors, what's important, what's not important, how it all fits together?
Yeah, I think it was all of that, Mike, and then it was getting the hospitals in these heart programs to accept that using this kind of technology to elevate these patients was valuable, and it was valid, and it actually worked. And so I think part of it was not only proving the technology, not only building the technology, but proving the technology and then selling the technology. And even though we're not in the business of selling valves, what we do is we identify patients that need valves or they need some form of intervention. They need treatment. We have nothing to do with what that treatment is.
You're agnostic. You're product agnostic.
We are completely therapy agnostic. And we are focused on how do we identify, elevate those folks that are candidates for some form of treatment. And I think the biggest challenge was getting the systems to accept that, yeah, that works. And so a big part of what we do on the technology side, and which is our key strategy, right, is how do we continue to innovate? We innovate fast. We kind of have this first-to-market innovation, continuous first-to-market innovation mindset. We've got these huge data sets. We've got subject matter experts. We're integrated into our customers' workflow. So we've got all of those really positive things going for us that helps validate what we do and confirms the quality of this technology. But in addition to that, Mike, we've got a strategy on publications. We believe that peer-reviewed publications are going to be super important to the industry. And so we in 21 have really been focused on that. So in the last 6 months, we will have had 2 abstracts published in JACC. There is a big conference coming up in April at the American College of Cardiology. We have a presentation that is using our data. That is the largest analysis of its kind in the industry that will be presented. And again, that's using massive data sets that we have. And it's some 734,000 patients and 939,000 echocardiograms that are being used. A study of that magnitude hasn't happened. And so we believe that having that kind of publication bandwidth and that kind of publication experience is really going to continue to help build that credibility. And none of our competitors do that because they just don't have the data. They don't have the ability to have publications with that much meaningful results and that kind of robust output. And so we think between the technology and we've got an incredible medical advisory board that work very closely with us on product innovation, product strategy, are available to talk to any other hospitals that we're trying to work with. Coupled with our publication strategy, we think is just what's needed and what didn't exist before in order to continue to show this.
To drive the narrative, yeah. The abstracts are going to and publications are going to serve as de facto kind of like legal is going to get mad at me for saying this, but it's kind of the equivalent of a device company doing clinical trials. You being able to publish white papers, presentations, abstracts showing the effects of the technology that's going to be meaningful, especially when you're talking about the data sets, the robust data sets that you're talking about.
One of my favorite companies is Apple, right? I've been an Apple evangelist for a long time.
Likewise.
There's a quote by Tim Cook where he said he believes that in the future, you'll look back and Apple's biggest contribution to mankind is healthcare, right? Now, I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said. And to their own admission, they have not grown in healthcare the way they thought they would, or the speed that they thought they would. And they believe, I recently heard another podcast on this topic, and they said because they came into it as a technology company, and they came into it as a data company, right? And what they didn't have is the peer-to-peer reviewed kind of data and those kind of findings. What we have is peer-reviewed findings to complement our data, to complement our technology, to complement our output, which we think is a really compelling story of validation and confirmation that this stuff really works.
Yeah, it lets you speak the physician's language. If and that's I write about it on LinkedIn all the time. There's this disconnect between healthcare and technology, and I thought it was fascinating when Alex Gorski retired from J&J, and then a week later he's on Apple's board. That didn't happen. By happenstance. Yeah, I think that you're probably pointing out a glaring divide that a lot of these companies are failing to cross over, that are technology companies that want to apply it in healthcare. That makes perfectly good sense. Let's move into the market a little bit. Who's the buyer? Obviously, so I'm always as an ex sales hack, medical device sales hack. I used to sell coronary and peripheral stents in the cath lab, so I've got a little bit of background about what you're talking about. But I'm always curious, who's the buyer, who writes, and then who's the end user? Is it are you guys selling to the hospital? Are you selling to these physician offices as well, or is it? And then kind of what is the product? What's the cycle?
Yeah, so think about it. Think about it this way. So on CardioCare is our main platform. We're selling into health systems. We're selling into hospitals. We're selling into IDNs. We have IDNs as customers, large national IDNs. We have individual hospitals as customers. So we sell directly to them. We typically work with a number of stakeholders across the organization because, again, we touch all elements of structural heart. We have heart failure. There's a technology play here, so we're talking to a broad group, and I like that because that just creates a stickiness of the solution, and our solution is very sticky because we're not only providing insight and benchmarking information about how these hospitals compare to their peers at a national level, which is interesting to the administrators, but we're also identifying these patients that need some form of intervention, which is interesting to the physicians and the heart programs. And so we kind of sell across a broader group of folks because of the stickiness and because of the depth and the reach of the platform.
Yeah. Are you guys doing anything OUS at this point?
We are not. We have, I'm sure you can imagine, we've had a lot of interest. And, I've been doing this a long time, and I tell the team that, look, we'll get there, but we need to execute this plan first. We've all stepped over a bunch of carcasses of folks who have tried to do too many things too fast. We want to be very, very good at these few things that we do that are very complex, very hard to replicate, very difficult to build. We want to be great at these, and as we continue to dominate in the domestic market, then there are some really natural and obvious pathways to international, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in Western Europe, that we have an opportunity to pursue. I'm just not ready to go there yet, Mike.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. You want to be good at what you do, really, really good at what you do before you extrapolate it out internationally, because there's a lot of different variables that can come into play there. Is there any competition currently out there for you guys, or is there anything on the horizon? I mean, I would just from a layman's perspective, I would think that you've probably got a lot of small companies that are kind of focusing in little aspects of what you do. I doubt that there's anybody that's doing anything on the scale of what you guys are doing at this point. But what's the competition landscape look like?
Yeah, no, you nailed it. There are some little kind of heel biters out there, ankle biters that do one little piece, but they use rudimentary technology. They do not have predictive capabilities. They do not have the data assets that we do. They may offer a one-off, very simplistic identification process, which is not very accurate. And then I think there are some organizations, some big systems, who are probably trying to build some of this.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think that's, personally, I don't think that's a great use of resources when there are other but that's, you see that in a lot of big companies, right? They try to build it and then they realize we should partner with somebody where it is their skill. It is their core competency, core skill set.
Like recruiting. We always do. I hear that all the time. We've filled a CMO search not too long ago, and the client they were looking for like 6 months, and they come to you in pain, and they're like, I'm doing 9 other things. I can't do this anymore, and that's what we do. Yeah, no, I totally.
And look, think about. I think a good analogy too is Edwards, right? Edwards had this capability inside. Edwards said, we can continue to do this internally and we'll be okay at it, or we can let this thing out, shine the sun on it, and pour some water on it and watch it grow. Yeah. And that's exactly what they did. And I think that some of these other companies and we don't run into that very often. Once in a while, we run into a big system where they say, yeah, we're trying to build something like this. And we're still, those systems, we're still in conversations with them. But I think that's really, really far and few, because I think they all realize that the core competency of a hospital is being a hospital and in delivering care and managing its resources.
And that's hard enough.
That's hard enough, especially in this day and age. But as far as other technology companies, if you think about the cardiovascular, the continuum of cardiovascular, there's a lot of companies that are out there that are involved in imaging and things like that. But what we do is very niche, and we are the only player, certainly of our scale and our capability, that's out there.
Yeah. When you said that about the companies building systems, it brings to mind too just the conversations around bias too. If you're only taking a patient subset from a certain portion of the country, that would inherently, you would think that there would be some potential bias and whatnot involved in it as well. Not to poo-poo what they're doing, but what you guys are doing across such a magnitude of data sets is really it's probably going to reduce as much bias as possible, I would think.
Well, and I think, I'm sorry, Mike, as I said too, we stop at the last mile. So with us, we're going to find the patients. We're going to bring them to you. You're going to see them in this digital dashboard that you get every day that's populated with information from your system every single day. And we stop at that last mile. You decide what therapy they need. You decide when to engage with them. And I think that's the important piece.
What's next for you guys? I know there's been talk of you guys getting into heart failure. Sounds like there's really no potential into this, but anything, what's the next hot thing that you're looking at?
Yeah, so we did release our heart failure module in November. It's been transformational for us. It really did fill a void that was in the marketplace. So we released that in November, having great traction with that. We've got another big announcement coming out next month in April, where we're going to be releasing another. We'll have a big announcement about some more capabilities that are coming out. I get asked a lot, do you want to move into other diseases, beyond cardiovascular? And my answer is no. All right. I think that we want to, again, our vision is we want to identify every cardiovascular patient in America. That's a lot of people. And we want to elevate the standard of their care. And so we are touching now, and will be in April, the full continuum of cardiovascular. And so we'll just continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into that.
It's kind of like what Edwards did. I mean, they made a beautiful business out of just, heart failure and cardiovascular, and really we're going to own this space. We're going to own this continuum of care, and that's what they do, and they do it really well.
Yep. And so I have no desire to move into, diabetes or oncology or anything like that. We're going to stay where we are. We're going to go deep, 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 deep domestically, and then we're going to continue to expand in the U.S. In international markets, and we're going to continue to look at different segments within the healthcare space that could benefit from this too, whether it's the payers, whether it's the pharma side. We just know that there's a lot of people that can benefit from this capability. And the more we can get it out there, then the more lives that we can help save.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think I've said, if I've said it once, I've said it 400 or 500 times. It seems like I feel like AI and this the power of data is kind of the last great hope for our healthcare system. I don't think that there's not enough manpower and hours in the day to kind of fix how broke things are, but with the scalability and the amplification of really good things in the market, like what you guys are doing, I've become much more optimistic about the healthcare market as AI has started. I mean, it's scary too, because you don't know what's on the other side of it. But no, I think what you guys are doing is going to have an immense impact, short, medium, and long term. I don't have any more questions for you. I just wanted to say thanks again for taking some time to join us. This is what you gave us today is exactly why I created this show. And going to be excited to watch you guys push forward with great success, I'm sure. And is there? I think the last thing I would say, Joel, is for people that are interested in the technology, or people that are listening that might be interested in potentially joining the organization. What's a good call to action? How can they get in touch with you guys and take that next step?
Yeah, no, I think the best way is to go out to our website, and I think if you can go out to www.egnitehealth.com. There are definitely links out there that we'd love to talk to anybody who is interested in the platform and how it might help elevate standard of care of their patients, as well as we're constantly growing and we're constantly looking for talent. We have a hybrid workforce model, so we have people all over the country. We're based out of Aliso Viejo, California, but we have people all over the country. So we have certainly embraced the remote workforce, and that's, I guess, one silver lining that came out of COVID was that people learn how to adapt to that. And we're gonna continue to focus on how do we transform healthcare, and that's to your point about data. Consumers are a lot smarter today than they were, and so data is available, and we strongly believe that we're in a data-driven healthcare model right now, and that consumers are going to continue to be the ones that drive that, and we want to help them in their journey. Ignite is with an E. It's with it's all lowercase.
Why was that? I've heard that was. I know that was an ode to Edwards, but there was more to that, I heard.
Well, it was really two things. One is when we were thinking about a name for the company, I wanted an action verb. I wanted something that was going to call action. And so we were able to secure the word Ignite Health. And the E is purposeful for really two reasons. One is that we are a company of math and science, right? What we do with our data and with our technology is driven by math, advanced high math and science. And the E, as you know, is a very important number in mathematical formulas. And so the E was a nod to the math and science part of our business, but it was also a recognition to where the company came from. It was a nod to the Edwards heritage. Even though we are independent, even though we work with all device companies, we work with anybody out there on the device space, it is a recognition of where we did come from. So that's it. And we call ourselves igniters. Again, is kind of following that call to action.
Love that. That's cool.
Yeah. So we're a team of igniters, and just to carry that little bit further in maybe a corny way, but we say we spark transformation.
Yep.
So
No, that's
and we're here to change and transform healthcare, particularly in the cardiovascular space, and how these patients are identified and engaged.
yeah. No, I think the thing that I love the most about it is the therapy agnostic approach. To go back to Steve Jobs and Apple, he didn't want his technology to be limited by how you were accessing it. He wanted everybody to be able to access it, and I think that was probably one of the biggest influences in Apple becoming the company that they did. Thanks again, Joel. I really appreciate it. Definitely would love to stay in touch, and appreciate you coming on. And after a couple more advancements in new technology and whatnot, maybe we'll get you back on the show for a recap.
I would love that, Mike. Thank you. It's great to be on here, and thanks again for having us on the show.
You got it. Thank you. Bye-bye.